He passed out as an advocate in 1970 and was enrolled as an advocate of the Supreme Court in 1972. Mr. Zuhair was encouraged by the then senior state counsel, late Justice P. Ramanathan of the Supreme Court, to join the Attorney General's Department as a state counsel, which he joined in 1973. He served the state for nearly 10 years, firstly as a state counsel in the civil division for 5 years, and as a senior state counsel and prosecutor in the criminal division during the next 5 years. He appeared for the state in large number of cases, both civil and criminal. He prosecuted in the High Court, in murder cases, and appeared in criminal appeals in the appellate courts. In 1983, he resigned as senior state counsel and reverted to private practice. After reverting the unofficial bar, Mr. Zuhair enjoyed a lucrative criminal practice. From 1994 to 2000, Mr. Zuhair was a member of Parliament on the People's Alliance National List in the Chandrika Bandaranaike Kumaratunga government, nominated by the Sri Lanka Muslim Congress. In 2001, he was appointed a President Council. From 2004 to 2005, Mr. Zuhair served as chairman of the Board of Governors of Zahira College while serving during the same period as the chairman of the Sri Lanka Rupavahini Corporation. As the head of the Zahira Board of Governors, Mr. Zuhair prevailed upon the Al Maktoum Foundation of Dubai, United Arab Emirates, to visit Zahira College. His Excellency Mirza Hussain Al Said, with His Excellency bin Anam of the Maktoum Foundation, visited the college on 26 December 2004 and announced the donation of the present 3-storied Al Maktoum building that houses a modern lecture theatre with several additional classrooms. In 2006, Mr. Zuhair was appointed Sri Lanka's ambassador to the Islamic Republic of Iran, where he served the country till 2012. The interest-free oil package that he successfully negotiated for Sri Lanka with the then Iranian government, headed by President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, brought into the Sri Lanka government coffers from January 2008 onwards. Much needed Iranian funds aggregating by August 2008 to US dollars 675 million, helping substantially the cash-stricken Sri Lankan government to win the war and defeat the division of our country. Zahira College is proud that an all-boy of the college had played a unique role in securing much-needed assistance to Sri Lanka to win the war that had devastated our country for nearly 30 years. Presently, Mr. Zuhair serves in the executive arm of the government as the State Secretary to the Ministry of National Integration and Reconciliation, which comes under the direct purview of His Excellency President Maithripala Sirisena, as the Minister in charge with Honorable H.M. Fauzi, a distinguished all-boy of Zahira College, as the State Minister. In this capacity, he is involved in implementing the National Reconciliation Program, both at the national and at the grassroots levels. Mr. M.M. Zuhair PC has played an active role in handling many critical issues of the country and the community. He has served the judicial system as a reputed prosecutor and respected defense counsel. He has served the legislature as a member of parliament and as a member in the number of parliamentary consultative committees, such as constitutional reforms. He is also a reputed speaker and a prolific writer. Throughout his career, he has been involved in community activities. From 1965 to 1973, he was the General Secretary of the Majlis-e-Islami Maligavatha. He was the managing editor of the monthly newspaper Pudumai Kural, published in Tamil by the Majlis for nearly 10 years, which addressed a large number of community issues. The Majlis also established a two-session Quran Madrasa, Madrasatun Noor in Maligawat, which is functioning successfully to this day. He was also an active member of the Moor Islamic Cultural Home and its Majlis, a model parliament for youth in which Marhum Marsuk Burhan was the founder speaker, with Marhum Mumin Khan as the founder secretary general. He was also the president of the Federation of Assemblies of Muslim Youth of Sri Lanka, FAMIS, from 1985, succeeding Dr. B.A. Hussain Mia, founder president. FAMIS functioned as an umbrella body of active Muslim youth organizations and was in the forefront of resisting LTT attempts to invade the Muslim into the Elam project and to divide the country. FAMIS was actively involved in community-related issues. On his return from Iran, he was involved in the formation of the National Shura Council, following threats to the community that culminated the Alugama racial attacks in June 2014. Mr. M.M. Zuhair, President's Council, will deliver the 125th anniversary Founders Day Oration on reconciliation and the Muslims of Sri Lanka.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Respected Principal of Zahira College, Mr. Marika, Chairman of the Board of Governors of Zahira College, Mr. Fawzul Hamid, former Principal, Mr. Jeffrey, my respected teacher at Zahira when I studied here, Mr. Balasingham, and Dr. Hussain Mia, whose name was mentioned a little while ago by the speaker who introduced me. It was a long speech. Mine is going to be a little longer. I hope you will all bear with me. And of course, we have many other distinguished former chairman, Mr. Hamid, our judge of the Supreme Court, Ms. Honorable Justice Masud Salim. We have on the other side the oldest old boy of Zahira College, and then our former mayor, Mr. Hussain Mohammed, and a large number of others, and ladies and gentlemen, and my dear students. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. May peace and the blessings of the Almighty be upon all of you. A very good evening to everyone. I have been asked to make this speech. I was also asked to give it in writing in advance, though I love to speak off the cuff, impromptu. But in keeping with the high tradition of Zahira College, I think it's much better that I have been relieved of the burden of making an impromptu speech, but giving a written speech, which I am sure you will carefully listen to as we go along. As I said, we may take a little long time. I hope you will bear with me. Now, we have gathered here today on the 125th anniversary of the founding of Zahira College. Now, to be invited by the management of Zahira to deliver the College Founders Day oration on such a milestone of an occasion as the 125th anniversary of the college is a great honor for me. I feel truly humbled, more because I am an old boy of this very unique educational institution. I must therefore thank the principal, Mr. Sri Mazika, the chairman of the Board of Governors, Mr. Fawzul Hamid, Vice Principal Sheikh A.M. Mihlar, who gave the welcome address to us, Vice Principal Mr. M.T.A. Rauf, who introduced me to all of you, and others for extending to me this opportunity of addressing you this evening. Let us pause for a moment to remember those wonderful personalities who dedicated themselves with great wisdom and thought to fulfill a critical need of the Muslims of this country. Why was the Collegiate Institute of Education for Muslims so critical? We had some interesting presentations by our students. In fact, they were very impressive. They very much have earned good prizes and rewards for making those presentations. I'm not going to deal too long, but it's going to be a little long. so I hope once again you will bear with me. Let us see the then background very briefly. Permit me to emphasize that by the time Zahira was founded in 1892, there were already in existence in the country 61 colleges of repute, 50 of which were established by the American missionaries, the Methodists, the Anglicans, and the Roman Catholics, who appeared to be in competition with each other while the British Empire was firmly in the saddle in the then Ceylon. The Buddhists had by then established only 6 schools, including Ananda College in 1886. And the Hindus had established a mere 4 schools, including the Jaffna Hindu College in 1887. That the Muslims of Sri Lanka were being left out in the competitive quest for quality education, pursued by others actively almost with the missionary zeal, could not have been lost on the community and its then leaders as the country drew close to the dawn of the 20th century. It was in this background that an inspiring speech was delivered in 1891 at the Maradana Mosque next door by that legendary Muslim activist of that time, hailing from Kandy, Mr. M.C. Siddhi, a lawyer by profession and editor of the monthly journal Muslim Nation. This speech led immediately to the establishment of the Muslim Educational Society. The primary objective of this society was to set up an English school in Colombo for boys with miraculous speed. In the very next year, in 1892, Zahira College was established, named then as the Al-Madrasatul Zahira, and renamed as Zahira College in 1913 when the college reached its 21st year. Now let me add, for the benefit of the ladies here, a large number of them I see, that there was no discriminatory decision to exclude girls. That was a time when the colonial rulers did not consider it respectful for their own ladies to play tennis. That was also the time that when even an English school for boys came under criticism from sections of the theologians who genuinely feared that English education would result in Muslims getting converted to Christianity. Though the fears of the then ulama were expressions of sincere concern, those fears were virtually unfounded, as subsequent events had demonstrated. Viewed in that context, that is, the fear of conversion to Christianity through English education, the founders of Zahira College, who formed the Muslim Educational Society following Siddhi inspiring speech, indeed took bold decisions. They did not fear those whose fears were unfounded. Contextually, Muslims then were already condemned to be the last of the 4 communities in pursuit of educational advancement. If the founders of Zahira College did not at that time take such critical decisions, what would have been the plight of our community today? Your guess is as good as mine. We would have ended up probably as tea boys, but with little chance of rising up to become prime ministers like Mr. Narendra Modi. In assessing the struggle of the founders, I wish to draw your pointed attention now to a gloomy underlying fact. That is, while other communities, particularly Christians, were far ahead with over 50 schools already in full swing, with the obvious support of the empire, and the Buddhists and Hindus were still struggling to catch up with 6 and 4 schools respectively, the Muslims were absolutely nowhere there in this competitive race for modern education. That was the background in which our founders struggled to set up the first collegiate level English school for the Muslims. What is equally noteworthy is that while the founders toiled and established the community's first such school in 1892, it had sadly taken our community exactly 50 more long years to set up the second and third colleges in 1942. Of course, there were small institutes catering to teaching English, which had mushroomed in Colombo, Kandy, and Galle during this period, and had closed down at various times thereafter. What I am referring to is the founding of college-level schools, which in fact developed to become fully fledged permanent colleges of repute, like Zahira College. Amongst those who played a key role in this initial struggle was Mr. Wapichi Marika, to which many references have already made this afternoon. He was the best-known building constructor of Sri Lanka, who served as the founder manager of the college for 25 years, until 1917. That's almost 100 years ago. It was exactly 100 years ago that the management of the college was handed over to the Maradana Mosque, with Wapichi Marika being succeeded by the chairman of the Maradana Mosque Committee, Mr. N.H.M. Abdul Qadir, as the manager of Zahira. Those were, by any standard of judgment, difficult times. We are, ladies and gentlemen, a grateful community, an appreciative group of people. We have gathered here, distinguished brothers and sisters, primarily to pay our tribute to the great founders of Zahira, who sacrificed their time, their thoughts, and their wealth to establish, develop, and sustain a prestigious educational institution mainly for the Muslims of this island nation. Our founders thereby enabled us to walk in this country to this day with dignity as respected citizens. The thousands of students who were processed, perfected, and presented to the world through the portals of our alma mater could indeed stand up to the world and declare, yes, I am a Zahirian, with honor, esteem, and pride. Let us remember now those great founders by name: M.C. Sidilebbe, A.M. Wapichi Marika, Orabi Pasha, a war hero of Egypt, branded a war criminal and banished from Egypt to our then remote island. Then we have Marhum N.D.H. Abdul Ghaffoor, considered the greatest benefactor of this college, whose contributions include the science block, an 18-acre estate at Mahalagama, the junior hostel, and this beautiful block that comprises this hall plus 16 classrooms. We also need to remember a younger brother of Mr. N.D.H. Abdul Ghaffoor, namely Marhum N.H.M. Abdul Qadir, who managed the college for 22 years, sacrificing his profession as a lawyer. We need also to remember Marhum I.L.M. Abdul Aziz, trustee of the Maradana Mosque, who campaigned through his journals Muslim Guardian and Muslim Padukavalan, encouraging educational pursuit among the Muslims. We must also remember Mr. Karimji Jaffarji, 1906, and Mr. P.B. Ummichi, 1923, who were early donors, whose contributions of buildings, the playground, and the Ummichi block of 12 classrooms were significant. We cannot complete our tribute to the founders of Zahira without a reference to the two great principals of the founding period of the college, Dr. T.B. Jaya and A.M.A. Aziz. We are well aware that Dr. Jaya, who was principal from 1921 to 1948, and Aziz, who was principal from 1948 to 1961, a period of 40 years, succeeded in raising Zahira College to what is passionately described by all as the golden era of Zahira. The college had a healthy mixture of mainly Muslims, Sinhalese and Tamils. Zahirians entered the university in significant numbers in the fields of science, medicine, engineering, law, arts, and vet science. The college performed exceptionally well in almost all fields of sports and extracurricular activities. Zahira also enjoyed a very high level of discipline. The founders built the beautiful edifice, the college. Dr. Jaya and Mr. Aziz achieved for the school all-round excellence. Support for enhancing the infrastructure facilities continued from benefactors such as Muthuapa, Pallaklebbe and Company, and MIM Nalim Hajian. And more recently, on my initiative from Al Maktoum Foundation of Dubai, while Deshamania Professor M.T. Furqan, a distinguished old boy and former chairman of the college, donated from his personal funds the Professor Furqan building, the 3-story building which is adjoining this, our Ghaffoor Hall. The swimming pool project and the renovation of buildings were completed with the enthusiastic support of the old boys, parents and well-wishers, initiated by the present chairman of the Board of Governors, Mr. Fawzul Hamid. I must also refer to another milestone that must be remembered. In 1982, the management of Zahira College was broad-based and vested in the Board of Governors of Zahira College under the Zahira College Colombo Board of Governors Incorporation Act No. 18 of 1982. That was an initiative of former Speaker, Honorable M.H. Mohammed, then Minister of Transport and Transport Boards. A noteworthy feature, I'm very glad to recognize his son, former Mayor, Mr. Hussain Mohammed, who is here. I do not know whether your brother, Mr. Shahul Hamid, is also here. Anyhow, we need to remember the contributions that have been made by many as we had gone along this 125-year journey. A noteworthy feature in the democratization of the management of the college was the inclusion in the Board of Governors, the President and 4 members elected from the members of Maradana Mosque, the President and 3 members elected from the OBA, 3 members each from the Welfare Society and the PTA, and 3 more members co-opted by the Board of Governors. There is now a dedicated team led by the present principal, Mr. Trizri Marika, working under the guidance of the Board of Governors, dedicated to restore and revert Zahira to the pristine glory of the golden era. This team, closely supported by the old boys, the academic staff and the parents, need your unstinted support, particularly to achieve academic excellence. The management team, while welcoming objective criticism, is fully conscious of its next challenge, achieving sustainable academic excellence and a higher degree of discipline. Simply put, we need to see more Zahirians entering universities, professional colleges, and higher educational institutions. In my view, Zahira needs to attract more Year 5 scholarship students, which will enhance the performance of the present-day students. Taking into consideration the requirements for the next 50 years or more, Zahira's architects had drawn a 10-year plan in which a 10-floor hostel facility for the college with residential facility for brilliant students and committed teachers. I would urge the management to give this project top priority to achieve sustainable academic excellence. I would commend the management to revisit the Al Maktoum Foundation and seek their further support. This historical process of establishing Christian, Buddhist, Hindu, and Muslim schools over the past 150 years
undoubtedly played a major role in uplifting educationally our communities. Indeed, the standards introduced by the American and British missionary schools upgraded the quality of life of all Sri Lankans. We are no doubt appreciative of these colonial time rewards. But did this colonial process also result in undue divisions and excessive communal compartmentalization amongst us Sri Lankans? Did it also damage, even partially, the prospects of establishing healthy coexistence amongst the different communities with unity amidst diversity? Did this process, together with other factors, also contribute negatively towards advancing the Sri Lankan identity and national integration? Did this communal divide at the schools level unwittingly contribute to a series of ethnic-oriented conflicts and religious confrontations that post-independent Sri Lanka had undergone at regular intervals? Is the need for reconciliation mechanisms in the country due today partly to this communal system of schools? There are those who think so. There are others who do not think so. Jane Russell, the British researcher, in her thesis, Communal Politics under the Donoughmore Constitution, refers to nearly 100 years of communal politics in this country, which had distanced communities each from the other. There are also those who argue that the British policy of divide and rule led to the present ethnically divisive and at times confrontational politics in our country. The British may have had their own good reasons for their puckish policy of divide and rule. But what reason does independent Sri Lanka have to hang on to this poisonous snake of divide and rule for nearly 70 years since independence? I have raised many questions within the last few minutes. I do not propose to answer in this forum the questions that I have raised. There are experts in this field who need to assess the changing roles that are being expected from the schools and the universities. All I wish to say is that the present school system ought not to be changed overnight. There must be due consultation with all stakeholders before major changes to the existing character of the schools are effected. Zahira had always accommodated a recognizable percentage of students from the Sinhala and Tamil communities. Mr. S.H.M. Jamil, delivering the 121st Founders Day oration, stated that during the stewardship of A.M.A. Aziz as principal, of the 138 Zahirians who entered the faculties of the then university, 37 were Sinhalese, while 21 were Tamils. 80 or 58% were Muslims. Like Zahira, there are other schools which also accommodate a fair number of students from other communities. But there are also leading national level schools which accommodate students virtually from a single ethno-religious group only. Such practices violate the fundamental rights provisions in the Constitution. Courts have been reluctant, with all respect to Justice Masud Salim, our former chairman, to make across-the-board decisions, apart from granting limited relief to individual petitioners before courts. These indeed require political decisions to pave way for reasonable integration while respecting diversity. Ethnic and religious coexistence must begin from the classrooms. Respect for other beliefs and cultures must echo from schools, particularly from the level of the teachers and the school environment. It is this concept that the present government is committed to implement. Permit me to refer to former President Madam Chandrika Bandaranaike Kumaratunga, who articulated this effectively when she addressed the Royal College and on another occasion the Ananda College staff and students at meetings organized earlier this year by the Ministry of National Integration and Reconciliation under the guidance of President Maithripala Sirisena and Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe. She said, "It is impossible to achieve national integration unless every school opens its doors for admission of a reasonable percentage of children from other communities." She strongly criticized the admission policy of some national level schools, restricting admissions almost exclusively to one community. Sadly, the media failed to give meaningful coverage to her views. When I spoke at Ananda College on the same occasion, I urged Ananda College to lead the process of uniting the people of Sri Lanka, at least at the level of youth students. I referred to the then Mr. T.B. Jaya and Mr. C. Sundaralingam, who were highly respected teachers at that time at Ananda College. I told the Anandians that when Jaya, who was your teacher, he was invited to head Zahira as its principal by the then management, the Maradana Mosque Committee, Ananda's teacher, Mr. Jaya, declined the prestigious offer. He thankfully declined unless Ananda's principal, Mr. Kularatne, agreed. When Mr. Kularatne heard about the offer, though Ananda was going to lose a competent teacher, Mr. Kularatne readily agreed to the mosque authorities to release Mr. Jaya to head Zahira. You will note the very high level of cordiality and respect the two leaders showed each other, and thereby to the two institutions, Zahira and Ananda. I did say this at the Ananda College itself. Mr. Jaya not betraying the trust that Ananda had reposed on him, and Mr. Kularatne rewarding Zahira with the most illustrious principal that Zahira ever had, with respect to all other principals who had served this institution ever since Dr. Jaya took over. We need to remember this as an encouraging example of fostering national unity while respecting diversity. I must also draw your attention that this period, when Mr. P.D.S. Kularatne was the principal at Ananda and Dr. T.B. Jaya was the principal at Zahira, our country was going through and seeing the revival of Buddhism as well as other religions, including Islam, following 5 centuries of foreign rule coming to an end. During this period, according to Mr. A.M. Nahia, a former vice principal of Zahira College, Mr. Kularatne and Mr. Jaya built up a close rapport between the students of Ananda and Zahira in both sports and literary activities. The point I wish to make here is the need for Zahira to revive closer relations between not only Zahira and Ananda, but also similar warm relations with the Hindu, Catholic, and Christian schools around Zahira. This will help unity, reconciliation, and overcome deficiencies that compartmentalization had brought about. Sport is another arena which could become an effective unifying platform. Sportsmen undoubtedly etch an unforgettable aura of friendship that generally lasts a lifetime. I wish to commend a few friendly matches to be considered for inclusion in the college calendar, where we could have sport activities involving other schools of the Christian, Buddhist, Hindu, and Muslim schools. We experimented this in Badulla through the ministry, where we had the 4 schools in one team. They were not playing one school against the other. We were not playing Zahira versus Ananda, no. Zahira with Ananda, with other 2 schools together, playing with a similar team on the other side, and all playing as Sri Lankans. This perhaps can help foster some level of understanding, friendship, because we feel we may have overstepped our limits when it comes to fostering our ethnic and religious, I wouldn't say isolation, but I would respectfully say identity. Having said that, our duty is to create a friendly environment for sustainable security for every child. We need to overcome the forces that seek to divide us. There are serious attempts worldwide to isolate the Muslims, labeling us as fundamentalists and extremists. I know some of you may be thinking, what a long speech this is, but bear with me. Don't think of how to get back home. Don't think of your dinner, but this might be really worthwhile to keep in your mind as you go back. So I will try to be as brief as possible, but you need to know what is in store for us. While we condemn all forms of terrorism and violent extremism, we need to be fully alert to the reprehensible attempts to blame the criminal acts of a few on Islam, our chosen way of life, and on whole communities of Muslims. Criminals need to be punished, but not communities. You don't have to punish the entire community because a few in the community have committed criminal acts or offenses. But this is happening. It is happening at the highest level in certain countries, coming sometimes from heads of state. We have to be very mindful of these developments. Internally, the Muslims of Sri Lanka have to be mindful of current developments. Left under the carpet, some of these issues can cause serious harm. During the past 8 years, following the end of the war, several issues concerning our community have been raised by extremist groups in the country. These groups are a small minority. The issues raised are based on false fears, unfounded utterances, fanciful fabrications, and mind-boggling myths. These issues are extraordinarily similar to issues concerning the Muslims raised elsewhere in the world, post 9/11. Interestingly, these issues began to surface here after the visit of a group to a European country in 2010. The Muslim community has effectively countered every single issue. Muslim civil society, including the National Shura Council, the Muslim Council of Sri Lanka, the Oslo Jamiatul Ulama, the Rapid Response Team, and others, as well as individuals and independent media personnel, have played significant roles in responding to these allegations. However, we need to recognize two important factors. Firstly, lies and untruths repeatedly uttered by those making the allegations have created a spectrum of prejudices against us among a wider section of the people. We need to understand the feelings of this wider section, some of whom genuinely believe the allegations to be true. There is a need to address this group differently from those who spread the lies and deception. We need to, for instance, calm and convincing responses. Some responses in the social media are counterproductive and often abusive. Secondly, we need to understand that highly respected members of the Buddhist clergy have, since July 20th, that is about a month ago, raised in a dignified manner some issues that relate to our community as well. Regretfully, sections of the media have reported their views in an anti-minority perspective. We need to be mindful of the genuine concerns of the Buddhist clergy, even though most of them are based on false fears and past prejudices. I do not wish to examine them other than mentioning some examples. Issues like wrongful religious conversions is completely against Surah 10, verse 99 of the Holy Quran. The Quran does not permit any conversion except on the genuine will of the converted. I don't want to go into details. Issue is demography. Our population, they say, is more, and it might catch up with the Buddhists. It's utterly fictitious, and it has been demonstrated by people like Delano Uduman that the rate of increase of the Buddhist population Don't go by the percentage ratio, but go by the actual numbers. The actual number is the difference between, or the gap between the two communities is increasing at every census, and that it is impossible to catch up the Muslims, even if they wanted, with the increase in the Buddhist population. Like that, there are many issues. Another is narcotics. One of the most threatening issues that is being mentioned in certain circles as being brought in by Muslims to inveigle the Buddhists. Now, this is very, very highly prejudicial. It can affect the long-term relationship of our community. Whereas we know the people who are bringing in narcotics are doing it entirely for business purposes. They have nothing to do with any religious objective. So our argument is arrest them, deal with them, convict them, and let the law take its course. Similarly, we have issues relating to historical sites in the East, which are being affected, which are being damaged by Muslims. This is another allegation. We are asking the question, why don't take action under the Antiquities Ordinance and prosecute those people? Why is that not a single case has been filed? That means there is no such thing happening. But widespread prejudice is causing a different view of our community amongst the majority community. It is very important that we have to address this in some other fora. I'm not going to go into any of those details, but I'm sure there are many issues of that nature which will have very, very deep penetrating impact on the future of our community. I will not want to say anything more on those matters, but to conclude that I would like to say, though there is an eerie feeling of insecurity within the community since the end of the war in May 2009, the initial post-war euphoria shared by all communities began to evaporate within months of the end of the war. Muslims' contributions to the success of the Sri Lankan war and terrorism were soon overlooked. This indeed is also a separate subject by itself, but which needs to be documented and publicly articulated again and again. This war was certainly not against any community. It was against terrorism. It was against the division of our country. The entire country needs to be repeatedly reminded of the patriotic role of the Muslims in, firstly, not supporting the division of the country. We did not support the division of this country. And therefore, we had to pay a heavy price by the Muslims being evicted from the north, murdered in mosques in the east, and extensive destruction to properties and livelihood. Thirdly, we should also remember that Muslims, particularly in the intelligence units of the armed forces, persons like Major Mutalif, Colonel Lafir, Colonel Nizam, they all sacrificed their life in direct confrontation and battling with the enemy. These have to be remembered in order to ensure that we have greater friendship, understanding, and unity between the communities. This is important that we keep on repeating this, because what is being repeated is all negative role of our community. I would also, in conclusion, say that Muslim countries such as Pakistan, Iran, and Libya also played significant roles in assisting the government in its war efforts. The point is, this war was never won by any single man. We need to demonstrate that the patriotic role of the Muslims of Sri Lanka had also contributed immensely for the victory of all the people of this country. We, as a community, will never allow our patriotism to our country to be ever questioned. I would only mention that if we are to live peacefully, if we are to live in this country with mutual respect and dignity, we have to respond to the false prejudices that are being spread by persons with vested interests, coming mostly from overseas. I would therefore respectfully urge that our younger generation start addressing these issues in a meaningful way, in a responsible way, instead of rudely responding or arguing these matters. Rudeness will never bring in any success. Courtesy, understanding, friendship will definitely bring great success to us. I believe that this is vital to establish our traditional bonds of friendship with all other communities. Amity is the foundation upon which national reconciliation and integration with respect for diversity could be built. Let me conclude the most anxious moments you may be waiting for by thanking the principal and the management of Zahira College for this honor of the opportunity to address you. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
Knowledge Box, the value-based media network.